Hey, real quick, this video is part of my 12 days of Christmas celebration. And basically, to celebrate the fact that I've been on YouTube for more than a year and the fact that it's Christmas, I'm going to be doing daily videos for a little while so that you guys can enjoy that. However, I also want this to be a bit of a gift for my girlfriend, so I'm going to be not having any of these videos edited so that she can take a break from that for a while. Don't worry, I'm also getting her real gifts. Don't worry about that. After the 12 days of Christmas are over, we're going to take a little bit of a break and come back on January 14th. So look forward to that. Hello Internet, my name is the Golden Stalfos, and today I'm going to be making a video in defense of Boruto because I feel like gets a bit of a bad rap. This video is mostly a response to a video on Clyde's channel from about a month ago. He did a collaboration with Seth the Programmer and Swag Kage where they just spent like an hour dissing the show. And as a Boruto tard, I take offense to that. Now, I gotta be honest, everything that they said about Naruto, I agree with. And most of the things they said about Boruto, I agree with if you're only talking about the manga, because the manga is shit. The manga is like less than 60 chapters, and it's just a constant race from one overdramatic fight scene with a world-ending threat to another, with like no time for anything else. There's no breathing room, no character moments, until Kawaki shows up, and then we get a little bit of character moments with him, but like, that's about it. But in regards to the anime, which has its own continuity, kind of like the situation with Dragon Ball Super, I feel like the Boruto story is a much more interesting story than what Naruto told us. Mainly because I feel like it executes on its premise better. See, the thing is, Naruto as a story set up a lot of things that it never paid off. You know, in the beginning of the story, there's this idea that like life and death battles are happening and, you know, the slightest mistake with a fucking kunai could cause death and failure. And we're introduced to this idea of this tight-knit three-man squad that we'll get to know over the course of the series, and they'll, you know, form bonds with each other and shit. We spend all this time talking about how difficult it is to use chakra and how important it is to have good chakra control, and how evil and malevolent the Ninetales is, and how like there's all this shit that's set up in the beginning that has this certain tone and this certain idea behind it, and within a few arcs all of it is abandoned. Right, like the three-man squad almost immediately dissolves after the Chunin exams when Sasuke just disappears, and we instead follow Naruto going on solo adventures for a while. And from then on, they're never a three-man squad again until the fucking final battle for no reason. You know, we spend a lot of time building up like the stakes and the tension and the idea that like, you know, even your ninja tools can make or break a battle, and like, you know, shit comes down to the wire. And then like in the first fucking fight, they start summoning giant fucking water dragons. Like a kunai's gonna do shit to that. I mean, for a while, at least it's still possible for kunais and shurikens to damage people, but like, even that stops being a thing eventually. Eventually, there are characters who can't even be damaged by the most powerful jutsu in the world. And not just like one or two unkillable characters, but like a whole host of them. First, there's that guy from the Akatsuki who's like, he can be damaged by everything, but he's unkillable. And then they decide that's not good enough, so they introduce Obito, who just flat out can't be hit by anything. And then they decide that's not good enough, so they introduce an entire fucking army of undead people that can't be hurt by anything. Now, to be fair, you know, things like kunai and whatnot were kind of useless a long time before this, but like, still, this is just completely different than what we came for. Like, when you hear the pitch of a story about ninjas, you don't even imagine them doing any direct combat, because ninjas are assassins, and if assassins have to get into direct hand-to-hand combat, they already fucked up. Whereas Boruto has a much simpler premise that it actually follows through on, right? Like, the premise for Boruto is, hey, you know that show Naruto that everyone liked? Well, what if we made a goofy slice of life anime set in that world featuring everyone's favorite characters' kids? Hooray! The end. You know, and through that lens, like, the scale of characters' power isn't anywhere near as important as, like, character development, which is a thing that the Naruto series was always lacking. Like, Naruto got a lot of screen time, but everyone else? I mean, what character development did we get for Shino or Kiba we didn't get any. They don't fucking exist. They were introduced as if they were hot shit, and then they just disappeared off the face of the earth a few chapters later because who cares? And that sucks because I cared. I wanted the arc where Shino gets to have friends who don't hate him because he has bugs. Like, I would have loved to see some Naruto material where characters grow and change and learn and form bonds with each other, you know, like a fucking story is supposed to have. Like, I get it that the Naruto fight scenes are hype as shit and all that, but like, it takes more than hype fights to carry a series, unless you're Akira Toriyama, in which case, like, you know. But, like, the thing is, that's not a fair comparison, because none of the fights in Naruto are as hype as the fights in Dragon Ball. Because, you know, that's not the point. They're supposed to be, like, dramatic and have a theme and shit, and, like, that's not as interesting to me as compelling characters that do compelling things and, like, learn and grow and shit. Especially since Naruto has such a huge cast of characters and they all have their own unique, like, powers and, you know, their own, like, style and shit. Like, there's a lot of room to develop those characters and do something interesting with them, and that doesn't happen. But you know where that does happen? In Boruto. In the story of Boruto, sure, Boruto's the main character, he gets most of the screen time, but you spend almost as much time on Sarada and Mitsuki as you do with Boruto, and there are several other teams of ninjas that get plenty of screen time too. Some of them feel a little fillery, but like, whatever. First of all, there's the Inashikacho team, which gets like a lot of screen time because 2 of their members are best friends with 2 of Team 7's members. Then there's the runner-up squad, you know, the team that's made out of like Boruto's friend who's the billionaire's kid and Metal Lee and that one guy who is like a fucking like 3-foot lead over everyone else in terms of height. And he looks like he's from the Cloud Village, but he's just like chilling there. And you know what, those guys are interesting as shit and they show up all the time. And it's really cool because they have like a much more balanced dynamic and they have like drawbacks and shit that they have to overcome. And it's cool. One of the bigger complaints that they had with Boruto is the fact that his power is like out of whack and he's just like way too strong compared to where Naruto was. But one, of course he is. He's not Naruto. He's Minato on steroids. Both his father and grandfather were the Hokage, and literally everyone involved in his dad's life is Kage level. Like, of course he's overpowered. I don't remember them ever complaining that Itachi is too overpowered at age 13, and Boruto's not even as strong as Itachi was back then, so I don't really see what the problem is. Also, if you take a look at his best feats in terms of the narrative rather than in terms of like taking an individual moment out of context for power scaling purposes, then his power is pretty consistent and not really that much higher than what you might expect. Every once in a while, he's able to land a hit on a strong opponent with a lot of help when that opponent has their hands tied with a bunch of stronger, better people fighting him. But most of the time, he just looks impressive because he's fighting people who are at or below his level. And sure, you know, he's like stronger than the average Chunin and sometimes even able to go up against Jonin, but it's worth noting that at his age, Itachi, Minato, and Kakashi were all Anbu. And he's Minato's grandkid, and he knows Kakashi, and he trains under Sasuke, who not only is like the most powerful guy in the world next to his dad, but also is Itachi's little brother and has a lot of similar, you know, talent and ability. Not quite on the same level, but you know. But also, Boruto doesn't just win by being arbitrarily stronger than people and doing big punches the way you would in Dragon Ball. He wins by coming up with clever solutions, getting around people's weak points, and surprise attacking them in ways that Naruto wouldn't have been able to, right? Like, he coats his kunai in lightning so that they'll penetrate defenses better, and he uses his shadow clones to give him a huge speed boost so that he can get past people and surprise them. You know, like, he's not just, like, crazy strong out of nowhere. He's using technique to get around his weakness. And to me, that makes him far more interesting than Naruto, who just like had to keep losing until he got mad enough to unleash his huge pool of chakra and overpower the enemy with big number. Like, that's boring. And like, sure, you know, if you take his actions out of context and like ignore all of the mitigating factors, then it seems like he's incredibly overpowered. You know, like right from the beginning when he fights Momoshiki, I mean, he doesn't do anything to Momoshiki, but like it's his Rasengan that does it. But like, it's really Naruto's power in the Rasengan. Like it's a combo thing that they do, and Naruto supplies all of the energy, and Boruto just like accidentally does the nature transformation. Or like later on when they're fighting Ishiki and shit, and the only way that Boruto can compete at all is to unlock the full fucking power of Momoshiki that's stored in his body, and like possibly even give up his whole soul and his whole body to this, you know, fucking demon guy that he killed already. Like, that sucks. Quite frankly, the idea that he might like die and lose everything to an enemy he thought he had beaten before is way worse than Naruto's shit with the Nine Tails, like on a conceptual level. Like, obviously, the Nine Tails caused way more problems for Naruto early on, and Naruto had a much harder life than Boruto did. I'm not trying to... But... And actually, the fact that Naruto had such a hard life is one of the things that made me like him and want to root for him, because I get it. But the actual threat from the Nine Tails was never really the same. Like, there were some moments where they implied that the Nine Tails could, like, escape if Naruto was, you know, too weak, and then Naruto would die in the process. But... that's it. Like yeah, that's bad, but it's not as bad as Boruto wondering whether or not he's going to like turn into a monster and kill his family tomorrow. Like, those are some stakes, man. Now granted, I know for a fact that the whole thing with the karma will never come to fruition. He will never become an Otsutsuki. Like, that's just not happening. He's the main character. But still, like, thinking about what effect that has on him psychologically is far more interesting than the same question about Kurama in the previous story. Also, one of the things they brought up was Boruto having Teneris Eye, which is a little bit of a weird choice on Teneris' part, but also, like, it doesn't really seem to give him any sort of advantage. He can't, so far at least, he can't activate it at will, and the only thing it's done in the anime is let him detect the presence of dark spirits in the first arc. Like, woohoo? Now, who knows, maybe it'll play a bigger role later on or something, but, like, for now... Also, it's kind of worth noting that with the whole karma thing going on, Tsuneri might have had a duplicate somewhere else that he respawned into, and he stored the Tenseigan on Earth so that he could come get it back. Because he didn't have it, you know, at the beginning of the story, he had to unlock it, and so, like, the unlocking of it probably wouldn't have been stored in the karma that he had already stored elsewhere. So, like, you know, if he made a second karma, it would just disappear when he reincarnated in the first one. And so, like, he'd have to store the eye itself and then come back for it. At least, I assume. But that's just speculation. I don't know if Teneri's coming back. I kind of doubt it, and I kind of would prefer if he didn't. But, you know, that's at least a reason why he might have done that from his perspective. Yeah, overall, after having watched a lot of the anime, I like Boruto a lot more than I like Naruto. It just does a lot more with its characters and its setting, and it focuses on those things in a way that Naruto never did. And sure, that comes at the expense of the big dramatic fight scenes, but like, fuck the big dramatic fight scenes. Like, go watch Dragon Ball. Like, I'm much more interested in exploring the characters and the world and like learning more about how chakra works and shit. Like, that's way more fun. You know, like every time the anime has an episode about like Chojo or Metal Lee or whatever, I get hyped. I'm excited. We get to see some fucking character development and learn some interesting shit about these characters. Like, that's great. I also like how they don't just use Chojo as the butt of fat jokes in the same way that Naruto used Choji. But like, yeah. In fact, there's a lot of stuff to like. I like how you can tell how the world has progressed and it makes sense. Right, like you go to Ichiraku's shop and like you can see how much business he's getting now that the Hokage eats there, you know, and or like the little tidbit that fucking Hinata ate Naruto under the table. Like, that's awesome. That's great. You know, with the world at peace, we get to spend a lot more time on peaceful shit, seeing how the nations interact with each other. We get to see a lot more from the Cloud Village and the Sand Village and whatnot, because they're not at war. They're not like rivals or enemies or anything. They can just, you know, hang out sometimes. And that's awesome. Omui is fascinating, and I love whenever he's on screen, you know? Gaara's kid is also pretty interesting. He's a bit of an edgelord, but, you know, he's pretty interesting. I mean, it's not all good. Like, I don't like some of the redesigns for the older characters. You know, like, Gaara, what is that haircut? Stop it. Just stop. And there are certainly some moments where I feel like they could have paid more attention to the continuity and stuff, but Naruto had a bunch of that too, so whatever. But overall, it just feels like a rich, interesting world full of rich, interesting characters, and we actually spend the time exploring those things instead of just rushing along from one big fight to another. And I like that. I like it a lot. So yeah, I mean, if you like big, huge action fight scenes, then Boruto may have a little bit less on offer than Naruto, but it's still not bad. And if you like actual story with characters and shit, then Boruto is leagues ahead of Naruto. It's a much better story. So yeah, thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next life. Laters. Also, go watch Boruto. It's fun. Hey, Endcard here. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Like, seriously though, please subscribe. I have like no subscribers. It's sad. If you want to find me on other social media stuff, you can do that at the Golden Stalfos on basically everything. Links to that are in the description, as well as to some charities I like but am obviously not affiliated with. I also have a Patreon if you like me so much that you want to give me money, though obviously only do that if you have money to burn, and if you do have money to burn, they're the charities I mentioned before. They probably need it more than I do. Mad ups to my girlfriend for doing all the editing for these videos. It's a really big help. Oh, and I occasionally stream on Twitch, so follow me there so you don't miss it. I don't have a formal schedule because when I tried to have a formal schedule, I couldn't keep to it. So, oh well. Okay, thanks. Bye.